If they find this, I'll end up like her. Burn this letter, trust no one. Too late, she should have burned it. The envelope smelled of cedar and thyme. Elena Carter brushed a strand of dark hair behind her ear, frowning at the yellowed paper amidst the stack of donated documents. The archives of Blackthorn Cove's library rarely yielded anything more exciting than land deeds or grocery lists from the 1920s. But this was different. The handwriting looped in elegant, desperate strokes. My dearest, meet me at the Hollow tonight. If they find this, I'll end up like her. Elena's pulse stuttered. The date September 12, 1957 coincided with the week of the Graves Hollow murder. She knew the story. The beautiful Lillian Hart found strangled in the woods. Her lover, Thomas Graves, had been the prime suspect, but the case went cold. A chill crept up her spine. Someone's playing a sick joke, she muttered, turning the brittle page. The ink blurred slightly, as if stained by tears. She tucked the letter into her notebook and spent the next 3 days obsessively cross-referencing records. Pulled the microfiche of Blackthorn Gazette articles about Lillian's death. Found Thomas Graves's obituary, died by suicide, 1958. Dug up a locked evidence box labeled Heart Case in the library's restricted storage. The box was empty. On the 4th day, Elena returned to her desk to find Daniel Graves leaning against her bookshelf. Up close, he was all sharp angles and stormy eyes, his leather jacket clinging to broad shoulders. A silver ring shaped like an oak leaf glinted on his finger, the Graves family crest. Heard you've been digging into my family's past. His voice was low, rough at the edges. Elena stiffened. How? She'd told no one. Then she noticed the dust on her desk rearranged. The empty evidence box sat slightly askew. Someone had been here first. She shoved the letter under a ledger. It's my job to preserve history. Some histories should stay buried. He stepped closer, and she caught the scent of whiskey beneath the rain. That box you opened? It's been empty for decades. But this, he flicked the ledger aside, exposing the letter, is new. Elena's throat tightened. Anonymous donation. A muscle jumped in his jaw. Burn it. That night, Elena dreamed of a woman in a blue dress. Lillian Hart laughed as she spun through a moonlit clearing, her skirts flaring like wings. Then hand-strong, desperate closed around her throat. Elena woke gasping, her apartment's shadows pressing in. On her desk, the letter gleamed under her lamp. She traced the words again. I'll end up like her. Not you'll, I'll. As if the writer feared for their own life. Her fingers itched for answers. The next clue came in a first edition of Wuthering Heights. Elena nearly missed it, a handkerchief tucked between pages 214 and 215, browned with old blood. The initials TG were embroidered in one corner. Thomas Graves. Her breath hitched. This wasn't just history. Someone was leading her to the truth. A floorboard creaked behind her. Elena whirled, but the archives were empty. Yet on the table where she'd been working, a fresh envelope lay. The handwriting matched the first letter. Look deeper. Daniel intercepted her at the cemetery gates. You're asking for trouble, he growled, blocking her path to the Graves family plot. The wind tugged at his unruly hair, and for a heartbeat, Elena saw the boy he might have been, carefree, untouched by legacy. She held up the handkerchief. Why would Thomas Graves's bloodied handkerchief be hidden in a book? Daniel's gaze darkened. You think I don't want to know who really killed Lillian? My grandfather died a broken man because of that accusation. Elena stepped closer. Then help me. Rain began to fall as he studied her, conflict warring in his eyes. Finally, he exhaled. There's a cabin in the woods, where they met. A crack of thunder split the sky. Somewhere in the trees, a twig snapped. Daniel's hand closed around Elena's wrist. We're being watched. Rain lashed against Daniel's truck as they sped down the coastal road. Elena clutched the bloodied handkerchief in her lap, the fabric rough under her fingertips. You're sure the cabin's still standing? She asked. Daniel's grip on the steering wheel tightened. Nothing rots in Blackthorn Cove, it just waits. The headlights cut through the storm, illuminating skeletal trees. Elena caught the flicker of something in the rearview mirror, a shadow darting between pines. "Did you see?" "Yeah." Daniel's voice was grim. "We've got company." A gun rested on the seat between them. Elena hadn't asked why he carried it. The structure leaned like a drunkard, its porch sagging under decades of neglect. Vines choked the walls, but the lock on the door was shiny, new. Elena exchanged a glance with Daniel. "Someone's been here." Inside, dust motes swirled in their flashlight beams. A rusted bed frame, a desk strewn with yellowed paper sand on the wall, a photograph of Lillian Hart, her face slashed with a knife. Daniel sucked in a breath. That wasn't here before. Elena reached for the desk drawer. A journal lay inside, its pages filled with frantic scribbles. "She'll ruin everything. I have to stop her. Margaret." A floorboard creaked outside. Daniel extinguished the light. "Don't move." The door burst open. Sheriff Briggs stood silhouetted in the storm, his badge glinting. "Breaking and entering now, Graves?" Elena stepped forward. "We found evidence. You found trouble." Briggs's smile didn't reach his eyes. "This case is closed. Go home." Daniel's voice dropped dangerously. "Your father was the original detective. Did he miss something? Or get paid to?" The sheriff's hand hovered near his holster. "Careful, boy." A gunshot cracked outside. Briggs spun, cursing. "Who the hell?" Elena grabbed the journal as Daniel yanked her toward the back window. "Run." Her apartment had been ransacked. Books torn from shelves, drawers upended, and on her pillow, another envelope. "Stop digging, or Daniel dies like his grandfather." Elena's hands shook. "They know we're working together." Daniel studied the note, his jaw clenched. "Briggs wants us scared off. But this Margaret Hart's still alive. And she's terrified," Elena realized. "She left these clues for a reason." Daniel met her gaze. "Then let's give her what she wants, the truth." Outside, a car engine growled to life. "Too late to back out now," he muttered. Elena reached for his hand. "I wasn't planning to." The engine's growl faded into the storm as Daniel and Elena crouched behind her shattered apartment door. Rain dripped from his jacket onto the ruined hardwood. "Not Briggs," Daniel muttered. "He wouldn't shoot near his own feet." Elena pressed the slashed photograph of Lillian against her chest. "Then who?" A shadow moved outside the broken window. Daniel shoved her behind the couch just as glass exploded inward. A rock landed amid the shards, wrapped in paper. Elena's breath came fast as she unfolded it. "Midnight. Hart Family Mausoleum. Come alone or he pays." Daniel's laugh was razor-edged. "Classic." She stared at him. "You're not actually considering?" "Of course not." His thumb brushed her wrist, sending an unexpected spark up her arm. "But we're definitely crashing their party." The cemetery gates shrieked like a wounded animal. Elena's flashlight beam caught the glint of fresh flowers on Lillian's grave roses, too crimson for midnight. "She's here," Daniel whispered. A figure emerged from the mausoleum, her white hair luminous in the moonlight. Margaret Hart clutched a revolver with skeletal fingers, but her voice was shockingly gentle. "I hoped you'd be smarter than this, child." Elena stepped forward. "You killed your sister." Margaret's smile fractured. "I loved her. That's worse." The gun trembled as she revealed the truth. Thomas Graves was innocent. Lillian had been pregnant, but not with his child. The mayor's father paid Briggs to frame Thomas. Daniel's growl cut through the night. "Then why the hell are you threatening us?" Margaret's eyes gleamed with tears. "Because the skeleton in that cabin is his, and the mayor will burn this town to ash before he lets that out." A twig snapped behind them. Sheriff Briggs stepped into the light, his service weapon drawn. "Enough stories." Elena's back hit the mausoleum wall as Briggs advanced. "Your father took bribes," she accused. "And I take orders," he sneered. Daniel moved like lightning, tackling Briggs into an open grave. The gun fired skyward as they wrestled in the mud. Margaret grabbed Elena's arm. "The cabin floorboards," she gasped. "Dig it up!" A gunshot cracked. Margaret collapsed, scarlet blooming across her dress. Briggs stood over her, panting. "Should have died years ago, you crazy woman." Daniel's fist sent him sprawling into the dirt. Elena cradled Margaret's head as the old woman pressed a rusted key into her palm. "Proof," she whispered, "under the floor." Her last breath smelled like rosewater. Dawn stained the cabin's walls blood red as Daniel pried up the floorboards. The skeleton wore a sheriff's badge from 1957. Briggs's father, Elena realized. The original detective. Daniel held up a corroded bullet casing. Thomas didn't run because he was guilty. He ran because he saw this. The mayor's father had murdered the detective to bury the truth that Lillian's unborn child was his. Elena's phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Leave now or the archives burn." Daniel kicked the rotting wall. "He's cleaning house." She gripped the bone's brittle fingers. "Then we bury him instead." Smoke stung Elena's eyes as they skidded to a stop outside the library. Flakes of burning paper spiraled into the dawn like dying moths. "No, no!" She lunged forward, but Daniel hauled her back against his chest, his arms a vice around her waist. "It's a trap," he growled into her hair. "He wants you to run in there." She twisted in his grip, her back pressed to his heaving chest. "Everything I've spent my life protecting is in there." Daniel's hands slid up to grip her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You're more than your research, Elena." His thumb brushed soot from her cheekbone, leaving a trail of fire in its wake. "And we're not done yet." A shadow moved in the smoke. Sheriff Briggs emerged coughing, his uniform streaked with ash. "Graves," he spat. "Mayor wants to see you, both of you." Daniel's fingers interlaced with Elena's silent question. She squeezed back. "Let's burn him instead." Richard Vance's office smelled of bourbon and lies. "A tragic accident at the archives," the mayor sighed, pouring 2 glasses. "But I'm prepared to be generous." He slid a check across the desk with too many zeros. "Leave town. Today." Elena's laugh was razor wire. "That's your play? My silence for a paycheck?" Daniel remained unnervingly still beside her, his thigh pressed against hers, a silent warning. Vance's smile hardened. "Your choice, Ms. Carter. Take the money, or what?" Daniel finally spoke, low and lethal. "You'll kill us like you killed your father's mistress? Like you had Briggs kill Margaret?" The mayor's glass shattered against the wall. "You have no proof." "Don't we?" Elena reached into her bag, pulling out the dead sheriff's badge. "Your father didn't just frame Thomas Graves. He murdered his own accomplice." Vance lunged, but Daniel was faster. The kiss of cold steel beneath the mayor's chin stilled the room. "Bad move," Daniel murmured. Elena's breath caught not at the knife, but at the way Daniel's free hand found the small of her back, anchoring her. Daniel's knife bit into the soft flesh beneath Mayor Vance's chin. A bead of blood welled along the blade. "You're bluffing," Vance hissed, though his Adam's apple bobbed against the steel. "Try me." Daniel's voice was lethally calm. The mayor's face purpled. "You'll never make it out of this town." "Wrong." Daniel pressed the knife deeper. "You're going to call off your dogs. Then Elena and I walk out. If anyone follows us, the evidence goes to the Boston Globe." A tense silence. Then Vance nodded. Daniel shoved him into his leather chair and grabbed Elena's hand. "Run." They took back alleys, dodging streetlights. Daniel didn't release Elena's wrist until they reached the fisherman's cabin, a rotting shack half sunk into the dunes. "Yours?" Elena panted, eyeing the boarded-up windows. "Grandfather's." Daniel kicked open the door. "Briggs doesn't know about it." Inside, mildew and salt clung to the air. Daniel barred the door while Elena checked her phone. "No signal. They'll triangulate us eventually." "You've done this before," Elena realized, watching him barricade the door. Daniel's smirk was shadowed in the lamplight. "Not with company." She should have been cataloging evidence: the badge, Margaret's key, the journal, but all she could focus on was the way his damp shirt clung to his shoulders as he moved. "Why help me?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "You could have walked away." Daniel stilled. When he turned, his eyes were black fire. "You really don't know?" The space between them crackled. A floorboard creaked outside. Daniel yanked Elena into the closet, his body caging hers against the wall. "Not a sound," he breathed against her temple. She could feel his heartbeat where their chests pressed together, wild and furious and alive. "Daniel," she whispered. His forehead dropped to hers. "Elena." Just her name. A prayer. A curse. The doorknob turned. The intruder was just a Kita reporter chasing the story. Daniel nearly broke the boy's wrist, disarming him. "God," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. "We're jumping at shadows." Elena unfolded the latest note left on her windshield. "The hollow at midnight. Bring the bones, or he dies like Thomas." Daniel snorted. Original, but Elena was staring at the handwriting, the same elegant loops as the love letters. "It's not the mayor." Her fingers trembled. "Margaret's still alive." Daniel went very still. "I watched her die." "Then who?" The lamp flickered. Outside, a woman's laughter threaded through the storm. Daniel's hand found Elena's in the dark. One way to find out. The hollow was a mouth of shadows. Elena's flashlight beam trembled across the clearing where Lillian Hart had died. The rain had softened to a whispering mist, clinging to Daniel's jacket as he scanned the trees. "This is a trap," he muttered. "We've established that." Elena shot back, but her fingers brushed his sleeve just for balance, she told herself, as her boots sank into mud. A figure materialized from the fog. White hair, blue dress. Elena's breath seized. "Margaret?" The woman smiled, and the resemblance shattered. Her eyes were sharper, her posture unbroken. "Miriam," she corrected. "Margaret's twin." Daniel stepped in front of Elena. "Bullshit. The Harts only had 2 daughters." Miriam's laugh was a razor dragged over glass. "And my father had 3. Poor hidden Miriam, sent away to spare his reputation, because they believed in old folklore and legends and said it was bad omen to have twins." She raised a rusted pistol. "But I've come home to finish what my sister started." The first shot kicked dirt at their feet. Daniel yanked Elena into the earth. The storm cellar door splintered under their weight. They tumbled into darkness, Daniel twisting mid-fall to take the impact as they hit the dirt floor. Elena landed atop him, her palms flat against his chest, her lips a breath from his. "You're heavy," he grunted. She scrambled off, cheeks burning. "You pushed me. I saved you." Above them, Miriam's footsteps circled. "I'll wait," she sang. "The gravesmen always come crawling out eventually." Elena fumbled for her, flashlight cracked, but working. The beam revealed shelves of rotting preserves, a rusted shovel, and a tunnel. Daniel followed her gaze. "Hell no." "Hell yes," she countered. "That leads under the cabin, to the skeleton." A gunshot thunked into the door above them. Daniel's jaw tightened. "If we die down here." "When we survive," Elena corrected. "You owe me a drink." His smirk was a ghost in the dark. "Deal." The air smelled of wet earth and old blood. Elena crawled first, the tunnel so narrow her shoulders brushed both sides. Daniel's breath warmed the back of her neck, his muttered curses a steady rhythm. "Remind me," he gritted out, "why we're chasing a 60-year-old secret when there's a literal murderer above us." "Because," Elena huffed, "Miriam didn't send those letters. She hates the Graves family. Which means someone else wants us to find the truth." The tunnel dead-ended at a root-choked grate. Beyond it, the cabin's floorboards. Daniel's arms caged her as he reached past to wrench the grate open, his chest pressed to her back. "You're really trusting right now," he observed, voice rough. "I thought archivists liked proof." Elena stilled. "I trust the evidence. And the evidence says you've taken 3 bullets for me today." His chuckle stirred her hair. "Counting, are you?" Light flooded in as the grate gave way. The skeleton was gone. In its place, a new note, pinned by a pearl-handled knife. "The mayor has the ledger. End this tonight, or I will." Daniel kicked the wall. "Which M is this?" Elena pried up a loose floorboard. Beneath it lay a tiny silk bundle, Lillian's engagement ring, wrapped in a scrap of wedding veil. Miriam wants vengeance, she realized, but Margaret wanted absolution. A creak from the cabin's porch. Daniel pulled Elena into the shadowed corner, his body shielding hers. "Don't move," Miriam's voice slithered through the cracks. "Tick-tock, little archivist. The mayor's burning the ledger at midnight." Their hands found each other in the dark. Midnight painted Blackthorn Cove in oil-slick shadows. From their vantage point behind the courthouse hedges, Elena watched the mayor toss another stack of papers onto the pyre. The flames licked at a leather-bound ledger, the kind that might contain 60 years of dirty secrets. "We need to get closer," she whispered. Daniel's arm barred her way, his sleeve brushing her collarbone. "Look." Sheriff Briggs stood sentry near the fire, hand resting on his holster. But it was the figure in the alley that made Elena's breath catch. Miriam, her white hair glowing like a specter's in the dark. "She's going to kill him," Elena realized. Daniel's fingers curled around her wrist, calloused and warm. "Not if we get that ledger first." A shout erupted as Miriam stepped into the firelight. Chaos. Daniel pulled Elena into the fray. She lunged for the ledger as Vance stumbled back, his silk shirt catching embers. A gunshot split the air, Briggs firing wild, and then Daniel was hauling her away, half-charred pages clutched to her chest. They ran until the sirens faded, until the only light came from the moon and the dying glow of the ledger's edges. The ledger was half-charred, but the critical pages remained: dates, payments, names. Elena spread the fragile sheets across the safehouse floor, her knees bumping Daniel's as they hunched over the evidence. "Briggs's father wasn't just paid to frame Thomas," she murmured. "He was blackmailing the mayor's family for decades." Daniel's shoulder pressed against hers as he reached for a page, and Miriam knew. This was never about clearing my grandfather's name, it was about burning them all. A gust rattled the windows. The storm had returned with a vengeance. "We should sleep," Daniel said roughly. "Tomorrow's gonna be hell." Elena eyed the singular cot in the corner. "I'll take the floor." "Like hell." He tossed her the lone pillow. They settled, but the atmosphere was charged with every ragged breath. "Daniel?" Elena whispered. "Yeah? Why did you really stay in Blackthorn Cove?" The silence stretched so long she thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, someone had to remember the truth. His voice was gravel. "Even if it was just me." Elena got up and woke Daniel up at dawn. The sheriff found them at the diner. "Mayor's dead," Briggs said, sliding into their booth. Miriam slit his throat with her sister's pearl knife. Elena's coffee turned to acid in her mouth. Daniel went preternaturally still. "And you're here because?" Briggs dropped a key on the table. "Safety deposit box. Has the rest of the evidence." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Thought you'd want to see it before the feds do." The second they were alone, Daniel gripped Elena's hand. "It's a trap. Obviously." She turned the key over. "But it's our trap now." His thumb traced her knuckle saunts twice before he let go. The bank vault was ice cold. The box contained a single photograph, Thomas Graves and Lillian Hart, standing beside a third persona, young Sheriff Briggs. "Holy shit," Daniel breathed. "He was there that night." Elena's pulse roared. "Which means he knew who really killed Lillian." A gun cocked behind them. "Took you long enough," drawled Briggs. Daniel shoved Elena behind him as the first shot rang out. The bullet grazed Daniel's arm before embedding itself in the safety deposit box behind them. Elena didn't remember moving, only the copper tang of blood in the air as she dragged Daniel behind the bank manager's desk. His breath came in ragged bursts against her neck. "Still counting how many times I've saved you," he gritted out, pressing a hand to his side. Crimson seeped between his fingers. Briggs's footsteps echoed in the vault. "Should have taken the hint when your apartment burned, Carter." Elena's fingers found the fire extinguisher beside her. "Close your eyes," she whispered to Daniel. The chemical cloud gave them 3 seconds of chaos, enough to sprint for the service exit. Daniel's arm slung over her shoulders, his blood warm against her skin. Rain lashed the abandoned boathouse as Elena peeled Daniel's shirt away from the wound. The bullet had carved a furrow along his left side, shallow but angry. "Lucky," she muttered, pouring whiskey over the cut. Daniel's laugh turned into a hiss. "Define lucky. You're alive." Her hands trembled as she pressed gauze to his skin. "And Briggs thinks we're headed for the county line." The storm outside howled like a living thing. Daniel watched her work, his gaze a physical weight. "You're good at this. Patchwork historian, patchwork medic." She avoided his eyes, focusing on the bandages. "Foster kid skills." His hand covered hers, stilling her movements. "Elena." A heartbeat passed. 2. Then the radio they'd stolen from Briggs's car crackled to life. "All units converge on the Graves estate. Suspects believed armed." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Miriam." Elena tied off the bandage, her fingers lingering on his bare waist. "We finish this tonight." The estate loomed like a rotten tooth against the storm-lit sky. Miriam stood on the porch, silhouetted by the window's hellish glow. She held Briggs at gunpoint, his own service weapon pressed to his temple. "Come out, little archivist." Her voice skittered across the lawn. "Let's end this the way it began, with blood on the Graves family doorstep." Daniel edged closer to Elena behind the cover of an oak. "She's unraveling." "We need that photo," Elena whispered back. "It's the only proof Briggs was there the night Lillian died." A branch snapped underfoot. Miriam's head whipped toward the sound. Daniel shoved Elena into the hydrangeas and stepped into the light. "You want a Graves? Here I am." Miriam's smile was a razor cut. "Just like your grandfather, all pride and no sense." Elena crawled toward the porch, Briggs's fallen radio in hand. The confrontation ended in gunfire and gasoline. Miriam's scream as the photo flared to ash in the fireplace. Briggs's sobbed confession into Elena's recording device. Daniel tackling her out a window as the west wing ignited. Now they sat in the hollow where it all began, watching the estate burn across the valley. The first responders' sirens wailed in the distance. Daniel's bandage had bled through. Elena peeled it back silently, her hands steadier now. "You were right," he said suddenly. "About why I stayed." She looked up. "I kept waiting for someone to see me," he admitted, voice raw. "Not a Graves, not a suspect, just me." Elena's thumb brushed his jaw. "I see you." His breath caught. The firelight caught the gold in his eyes, the unspoken something that had simmered for weeks. A sheriff's deputy crested the hill. "Carter? Graves? We need statements." Daniel's forehead dropped to Elena's shoulder. "Oh, God!" She hid her smile in his hair. Later, the Blackthorn Cove Gazette called it the Graves Hollow Reckoning. Front-page headlines detailed Sheriff Briggs's arrest, Miriam's disappearance into the storm, and the exoneration of Thomas Graves's name. The mayor's ledger, what remained of it, had been enough to bury the Vance family legacy for good. Elena stood in the ruins of the archives, salvaging what she could from water-damaged boxes. The scent of smoke still clung to the pages, mixing with the salt air drifting through the broken windows. A shadow filled the doorway. Daniel leaned against the frame, one hand pressed to his healing side, the other holding 2 steaming coffees. "You look like hell," he said. "You are hell," she shot back, but accepted the coffee anyway. Their fingers brushed just like they had a dozen times before, but this time neither of them pulled away. A beat passed. Daniel cleared his throat. We never finished that conversation." Elena sipped her coffee to hide her smile. "Which one?" "The one where you see me." His voice was rough, but his eyes were soft. "And I didn't get to say it back." The air between them crackled. Then, "Ms. Carter." The library intern burst in, arms full of moldy ledgers. "The Historical Society called." Daniel's groan was so loud it startled the seagulls outside. It happened 3 days later, in the cramped back room of the rebuilt archives. "You're infuriating," Elena snapped, slamming a box of documents onto the table. "You can't just glare at every intern who talks to me." Daniel crossed his arms, his biceps straining against his shirt sleeves. "That kid had hard eyes. He's 19. And I'm jealous," he growled. The words hung between them, raw and unvarnished. Elena's breath caught. "Say that again." Daniel stepped closer. I'm jealous. I'm possessive. I've been out of my mind since you walked into that cemetery. Another step. And if you don't want this, tell me now. Elena didn't move. What if I do want it? Daniel's gaze dropped to her lips. Then I'm done waiting. He kissed her like he'd been imagining it for months, which, Elena realized, he probably had. His hands cradled her face, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones as if she were something fragile. She wasn't. She fisted his shirt and pulled him against her, swallowing his surprised laugh. The stack of ledgers they knocked over went ignored. 1 month later, Elena found a letter on her desk. Not yellowed, not anonymous. Daniel's messy scrawl stared back at her. Elena, I don't do poetry, but here's the truth. I fell for you the second you called my family's tragedy a puzzle. You looked at the wreckage of my name and saw something worth saving. So this is me, asking properly dinner, tonight. No mysteries, no murders, just us, D. She was still smiling when he appeared in the doorway, looking unfairly handsome in a button-down and actual shoes instead of his usual boots. Well? He asked, nodding to the letter. Do I get an answer? Elena folded the note into her pocket and took his hand. Let's start our own story. Enjoyed the story? Like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss the next one.